Right, so you wanted to dive into the Laken Riley case, huh?
Yeah, this one is definitely a tough one.
It is. It really is.
But important.
Absolutely, and you're right, it's important.
Yeah.
This 22-year-old nursing student tragically killed while jogging at the University of Georgia
Back in February.
back in February. And this case, I mean, it just blew up, didn't it?
It became national news very, very quickly.
Yeah, so we're going to break it down. We're going to look at, the facts as they were presented in court, all the evidence, and how this, became such a flashpoint in these big political debates that are going on.
Yeah, you're right. This case touches on so many different things, right? We've got the justice element, of course,
Yeah.
but then we also have immigration and safety and how all of those things kind of blend together when we talk about these issues.
Absolutely. So let's start with just a really quick recap what happened.
Yeah, so Laken went for a jog on the University of Georgia campus one morning in February, and she never came back.
And she was found later that day.
Later that day, they found her dead.
Yeah. And the details that came out during the trial, I mean, they were really disturbing.
Yeah, they were really disturbing. So remember, we're talking about Jose Antonio Ibarra, an undocumented migrant from Venezuela, charged with murder, aggravated assault with intent to rape. And they even brought up these peeping Tom violations.
Really?
Yeah, to kind of build a picture of his behavior prior to this incident.
So they were trying to establish a pattern.
Exactly. And their argument was that Laken was attacked on that trail, struck with a rock, and ultimately asphyxiated.
Oh, wow.
And, their theory was that this wasn't some random act of violence, but a very targeted attack, and the goal was sexual assault.
I do remember some of the details that really stuck with people, like that officer's body cam footage showing Laken's body, and it was off the trail.
Away from the trail.
And her shirt was pulled up.
Right. And that was a very powerful piece of evidence for the prosecution.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It suggested a struggle, and, that attempt to remove clothing obviously supported their theory of attempted sexual assault. But of course, there was other evidence too, and this is where it starts to get really interesting because we see physical evidence used by both the prosecution and the defense to argue their cases.
Right, like the DNA.
Yes, the DNA found under Laken's fingernail.
And that matched Ibarra.
It matched Ibarra, and they also presented Ibarra's thumbprint, which they found on Laken's cell phone, which was near her body.
Wait, but wasn't there something about a glove?
Yes, a black disposable glove was found near Ibarra's home.
Okay.
It even had Laken's blood on it.
Oh, wow.
But here's the catch. There was a hole in the glove right where the thumb would be.
Oh.
So the prosecution used that to suggest that Ibarra was wearing gloves during the attack, but one of the gloves tore, which left his fingerprint on the phone.
Oh, that makes sense. But couldn't the defense say, well, maybe someone else wore those gloves or that the fingerprint got there some other way?
That's exactly what they argued. They argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that it didn't definitively prove that Ibarra killed Laken, and they even went so far as to say that there were problems with the DNA and fingerprint analysis methods.
Oh, so it was like maybe there was contamination or something.
Exactly, like maybe the lab messed up somehow, so they were really trying to create that reasonable doubt.
And there was also that jacket, right?
Yes.
It was found in a dumpster.
Found in a dumpster. And this one had both Laken and Ibarra's DNA on it.
Wow.
And there was even body cam footage of the officer finding the jacket. And he comments on the women's hair that's tangled in the buttons, which was a really impactful moment during the trial.
So you've got DNA, we've got fingerprints, a glove, a jacket. I mean, it sounds like a lot of evidence.
It is, but how strong that evidence is depends on how you interpret it.
Right, and that's what makes these cases so fascinating, right? Because each side can take these pieces and construct a story.
Right?
And it's up to the jury to decide which story is more believable.
Exactly. And, you requested this deep dive to look at some of the political aspects of the case, too, right?
Yeah.
And this is where things get really complex because Laken's death, unfortunately, became this big symbol in a much larger national debate.
Because Ibarra was an undocumented immigrant.
Exactly. And that immediately put this case right at the center of discussions about immigration, crime, border security, you name it. Politicians from both sides jumped right in.
They did. It was very quick how that happened.
Oh, yeah, it was very quick. Trump, he was running for president again.
Right.
And he really used this case to go after Biden's immigration policies.
Oh, yeah.
Saying that, Laken's death was a direct result of those policies and promising mass deportations if he was elected.
It's crazy how these cases just become so politicized.
It happens all the time.
So fast, too.
So fast.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't just Trump either.
Right.
Bill Clinton was campaigning for Kamala Harris at the time, and, he said that bipartisan border security bill that Trump had actually opposed could have prevented this.
So both sides were using it.
Both sides were using it to kind of attack their opponents.
No.
And it even went beyond just the politicians themselves. Laken's parents actually attended a Trump rally.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that image became very powerful, for people who agreed with Trump's stance on immigration.
And it's just so sad. I mean, to think about her parents grieving
Yeah.
and then being thrust into this national debate.
It's hard to imagine what they were going through.
Yeah.
It really highlights how, these personal tragedies can become fuel for political agendas.
Yeah, it's a good reminder to step back and look at the facts, especially when things are so emotional.
Absolutely, because it's easy to get swept up in these narratives
And not even realize,
without really examining the evidence.
like, is this really true?
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember, amidst all this, that CNN actually did their own analysis, and they found no significant connection between immigration and increased crime rates.
Yeah, that was really interesting.
So basically, what some of these politicians were saying wasn't really supported by the data.
Right. It's a good reminder to always look at the facts and to, be critical of what we're hearing.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
especially when emotions are so high.
Right, because it's so easy to fall into these, simplified narratives that we hear in politics.
Yeah, but, at the end of the day, this is about a young woman who lost her life.
Absolutely.
The impact on her family, her friends, her community,
Her future.
right? What do we know about Laken?
Yeah.
What was she like?
Well, everyone who knew her said she was a really bright, caring person. She was a promising nursing student set to graduate in 2025.
Oh.
She had actually just made the dean's list and received her honorary white coat.
Oh, wow. That's such a big moment for nursing students.
It is. It's a really symbolic moment. It represents their dedication to caring for others.
And it's just heartbreaking, knowing what happened to her.
It is. Her sorority sisters talked about her being a bright light and a wonderful nurse, someone who really cared about people.
Do we know anything about how her family is doing?
Her sister actually shared a really moving tribute on Instagram. She talked about Laken being her best friend, how much she misses her. It's a reminder of the human cost of this tragedy. Those ripple effects that extend far beyond just the courtroom or the political arena.
Yeah. And, what about the University of Georgia community? I mean, I imagine this must have had a huge impact on campus.
Oh, absolutely. There was a lot of fear and anxiety, especially among female students.
Right.
We actually spoke to Margaret Fawcett, who's a pharmacy student there, and she said that she just doesn't feel as safe on campus anymore, that she's much more vigilant now, especially at night.
I can only imagine. I mean, thinking about what happened to Laken walking alone on campus.
Right. And she even said that she'll often go with her friend when her friend runs on the same trail where Laken was killed.
Wow. So it really changed people's lives.
Their everyday lives. Yeah. It's not just an abstract news story for them.
It's real.
It's very real and present in their minds.
And, this case also brought up a lot of conversations about justice and punishment. Because the prosecution, they decided to seek life imprisonment for Ibarra instead of the death penalty.
Yeah.
What was the reaction to that?
Well, Margaret, for example, thought that was the right decision.
Okay.
But, not everyone agreed.
Of course.
There was a lot of debate within the community about what would be true justice in this case.
It's so interesting how one case can bring up so many complex questions
About the justice system.
about, the death penalty, about how we balance punishment and rehabilitation.
It's a lot to think about.
It really is. And it shows that even within a community that was so directly affected by this, there's still such a range of opinions and perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of different viewpoints for sure.
And it's a lot to process. But I think, with all the heaviness of this case, it's important to, try and find some hope in all of this.
We agree.
And feel like, even with something this tragic, that we can, heal and grow and have conversations about it.
Yeah, I think that's really key. This case, it forces us to confront some really tough issues and to kind of, wrestle with some difficult emotions and examine our own beliefs about justice and accountability.
Absolutely.
And those aren't always, fun conversations to have.
Right. They're hard.
But they're essential if we really want to create a society that's safer and fairer and more compassionate.
And Laken Riley's story, I mean, as tragic as it can be that starting point
Yeah, I can't.
for those conversations.
Yeah.
It makes us ask those tough questions, like how do we balance the need for justice with, all the complexities around immigration and individual rights?
Right.
How do we keep our communities safe while still being compassionate and understanding.
That's the challenge, isn't it?
It is.
Finding that balance.
Yeah.
And I don't think there are easy answers, but, being willing to have those tough conversations, to listen to different perspectives, maybe we can find a way forward, a way to, honor Laken's memory and work towards a future where, these kinds of tragedies are less likely to happen.
We really appreciate you taking this deep dive with us. It's been emotionally challenging,
It has.
but also incredibly insightful.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that, we have to keep searching for the truth, that the world is complex and, that these kinds of conversations matter.
They do, and we want to thank you for, trusting us to guide you through this.
Of course.
It's a very difficult and sensitive topic, and we hope that, by exploring the facts, the evidence, all the context surrounding Laken's death, that we've helped shed some light on this really multifaceted story.
And as you continue to think about this case,
Yeah.
we encourage you to, be critical and question assumptions and seek out different viewpoints.
Yeah.
It's by doing that we can start to have some of those constructive dialogues that can hopefully lead to some real change.
At the end of the day, we hope this deep dive has left you with, more questions than answers.
Yeah.
Questions that will inspire you to keep learning and keep reflecting.
Because it's in that search for answers, in that willingness to grapple with the complexity of it all, that we can grow and understand each other better and hopefully create a better world.
That's the goal.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.